Roger Scott Dunn graced the world with his presence on February 10, 1967, in the city of Lubbock, Texas, as one of the two beloved sons of Jim and Mary Sue Dunn. Affectionately known as Scott, he was characterized by his playful spirit, love for life, and undeniable charm with the ladies. By the age of 24 in 1991, Scott transitioned from military life to civilian comforts, returning to Lubbock, where he took up a position at MGM Electronics, specializing in the installation of bespoke sound systems in vehicles. His passion for automobiles was evident, as he not only excelled in stereo installation competitions, but also engaged in the buying, restoring, and reselling of pre-owned cars. Scott was romantically involved with Leisha Hamilton, a 28-year-old waitress. On the fateful evening of May 13, 1991, he attended a gathering at a friend's residence, where he unexpectedly fell gravely ill. Unable to walk or drive, he sought refuge at his friend's home for the night. The following morning, Leisha came to collect him, ensuring he could recuperate in the comfort of their shared apartment at Oakwood Club Apartments, located at 5818 24th Street. By May 15th, Scott had recovered to return to work, but with his car still at his friend's place, he arranged for friends to drive him. He informed Leisha of this plan, and she kindly prepared him tea before heading off to her own job. When his friends arrived at the apartment, Scott did not respond. Later, Leisha returned home and suggested to his friends that he might have left while she was at work. However, Scott did not return that night, and for the next 2 days he remained unaccounted for. Concerned, Leisha reached out to Jim Dunn, Scott's father residing in Pennsylvania, to report his disappearance. Jim promptly contacted the Lubbock Police Department to file a missing persons report, noting that it was highly unusual for Scott to abandon his cherished Camaro and tools at work. Upon their arrival at the couple's apartment, Leisha informed the officers of a peculiar detail. A piece of carpet was missing from beneath the couch in Scott's bedroom. The police soon discovered that this missing carpet had been meticulously duct-taped to the remaining carpet in the room. A section of carpet had been taken from the bedroom, revealing a seam stained with a rusty hue that unmistakably indicated blood. Beneath the carpet, a significant stain marred the padding, with traces of blood having permeated down to the concrete beneath. It appeared as though an attempt had been made to cleanse the baseboard of the wall, hinting at a desperate effort to erase evidence. The investigators employed luminol to examine the room, and the results were illuminating. It was evident that a violent confrontation had befallen someone, likely Scott. As they delved into Scott's life and acquaintances, they sought any peculiarities that might provide insight. Notably, Scott had a prior arrest for drug-related offences, and at the age of 23, had been implicated in a robbery at a Domino's Pizza. The police pursued this angle, probing whether anyone might have had a motive to harm Scott due to his associations with drugs or financial matters, but their inquiries yielded little of value. In examining Scott's relationship with Leisha, investigators uncovered numerous irregularities. It appeared that Scott struggled to fully commit to Leisha, who had recently discovered that he was engaged to another woman just a month prior to his disappearance. This revelation raised suspicions of potential revenge. Could Leisha have acted out of spite? Friends of Scott expressed concerns regarding Leisha, with a family acquaintance revealing that Scott harbored fears about ending their relationship. Leisha's former partners had cautioned Scott about her propensity for violent jealousy. Throughout the investigation, Leisha maintained contact with Jim to discuss the case, and he recorded their conversations. Strangely, Leisha seemed less focused on finding Scott and more preoccupied with his sports car, even inquiring if she could claim it. She insisted that while she didn't want the car, she felt a pressing need for it, displaying an unsettling impatience. Further inquiries revealed that Leisha had a criminal past, having been arrested in New Mexico for embezzlement. Investigators persisted in their inquiry into the possibility of her involvement, only for her to present the first suspect. Leisha confided in Jim her belief that a man named Tim Smith was entangled in Scott's mysterious disappearance. Residing in close proximity to Scott, Leisha had developed an infatuation with Tim. The police approached Tim at his residence, where they found him in the midst of packing for a move. He graciously permitted them to search his apartment. Upon returning to the room where Tim awaited, the officers noticed that he had shifted a roll of duct tape from his bookshelf. Tim insisted he had not moved anything, yet the police uncovered the tape cleverly concealed behind a stack of books. The tape was subsequently sent for forensic analysis, utilizing infrared technology to examine various wavelengths and components. The findings revealed that the tape from Tim's apartment matched the tape found on the carpet in Scott's bedroom. Notably, triangular green carpet fibers, identical in hue to Scott's bedroom carpet, were discovered on the tape. Regrettably, the absence of a body left investigators with limited options, and the case grew cold. Frustrated, Jim took it upon himself to seek the truth. He connected with the Vidocq Society, an exclusive assembly of 82 international forensic specialists dedicated to unraveling unsolved crimes. In Philadelphia, Jim consulted with Richard Walter, a co-founder of the society, to discuss his son's case. Richard swiftly asserted that Scott was no longer alive, and expressed his firm belief that Leisha possessed crucial information. He relayed the details to Dr. Shepherd of New Scotland, who determined that Scott had met his demise in his bedroom, having suffered multiple blows from a blunt object. After conducting several tests, Dr. Shepherd confirmed that the volume of blood lost indicated survival was impossible. Richard Walter implored the district attorney to bring this case to trial. Richard revealed that while a complete body was absent, a crucial body part, the connective tissue from the blood, was discovered. He also observed that the duct tape retrieved from Scott's bedroom contained unidentified hairs. Subsequent testing identified these strands as belonging to both Tim Smith and Leisha Hamilton. After a lengthy investigation, Smith and Hamilton were apprehended 3 years post Scott's mysterious disappearance in 1994. It is widely believed that Scott's life was tragically extinguished in the early hours of May 16, 1991, while he lay asleep, having been struck 4 times with a blunt instrument. In their desperate attempt to erase the evidence, Hamilton and Smith left behind a significant amount of incriminating material. It is suspected that Leisha sought vengeance upon discovering Scott's infidelity and engagement to another woman, with Smith being manipulated by her due to his obsession. They faced separate trials, resulting in both being found guilty. Leisha Hamilton received a 20-year prison sentence, while Smith was given 10 years of probation. The jury concluded that Smith assisted Hamilton in the cleanup, but lacked sufficient evidence to prove his presence during the crime. The rationale behind Leisha's relatively lenient sentence in Texas remains unclear, yet she was required to serve the entirety of her term after failing multiple parole applications. Following her release, Leisha vanished from public view. It was particularly disheartening that neither Hamilton nor Smith disclosed the location of Scott's remains. However, in 2012, a wave of relief washed over Jim Dunn when Lubbock Victim Assistance Services informed him that skeletal remains had been unearthed in a sewage system adjacent to Scott's apartment complex. Dental records confirmed the remains belonged to Scott. On June 16, 2012, the Dunn family laid him to rest beneath a stone marked with the image of Scott's beloved Camaro.
Timothy Thomas, 33, has been indicted by a local grand jury on charges of murder and burglary in connection with the cold case killing of Sebastian Oenus, a Buchholz high school student that took place 13 years ago. The indictment was announced by Alachua County Sheriff Emery Gainey and 8th Circuit State Attorney Brian Kramer during a news conference held on Monday, February 5th. On June 25, 2010, Sebastian Oenus, who was only 16 years old at the time, was playing video games with a neighbor at his home in the Benwood subdivision of Gainesville. Tragically, while he was in the kitchen, he encountered a burglar who shot him multiple times. Sebastian's family immediately called 911, but unfortunately, paramedics pronounced him dead at the scene. During the press conference, Sebastian's brother, Boris Oksenius, expressed the family's hope for justice, stating, "We hope as a family that you can help us get to the final chapter of this, which is bringing my brother justice. He was only 16 years of age. His life was stolen." Investigators discovered that Timothy Thomas had used a car borrowed from a female friend during the time of the murder. Although they do not believe she had prior knowledge of Thomas's plans, Sheriff Gainey urged anyone with information to come forward. The woman is described as a 20-year-old Hispanic with a short, heavy build. The vehicle used by Thomas was identified as a white or cream Kia Sportage or a similar model. Sheriff Gainey acknowledged the long and challenging road ahead, assuring the community, "I know this has been a long and difficult road. We're making some progress, but we also understand it's not over yet. Rest assured we'll be with you every step of the way." In 2021, new evidence emerged that led to the identification of Timothy Thomas as a suspect in Sebastian Oksenius' murder. Currently serving a life sentence for the attempted murder of a Monroe County Sheriff's deputy in Stock Island, Florida in 2015, Thomas has an extensive criminal record with 23 felony charges and 8 misdemeanors. He has faced multiple arrests by various law enforcement agencies for battery, burglary, and attempted murder throughout the state. These arrests range from the Key West Police Department to different Central Florida agencies. In 2015, Thomas was stopped by authorities in Monroe County for driving with a stolen license plate. A video presented during the press conference on Monday depicted a shootout between Thomas and the deputy, who was shot in the chest but fortunately saved by his bulletproof vest. On December 23rd, Thomas was formally charged by a grand jury in Alachua County with 1 count of murder while engaged in trafficking and 1 count of armed burglary. The details of the indictment remain undisclosed as per court records. His arraignment took place on Monday morning at the Alachua County Courthouse, and he is currently being held at the Alachua County Jail on a bail set at $1 million. Thomas's court-appointed public defender has requested to withdraw from the case, citing an undisclosed and irreconcilable conflict of interest. Decades may pass, and many cases may grow cold, but occasionally some are brought back into the light. Today's story is no exception. It is a tale of unexpected resolution after nearly 25 years of stagnation. This particular case revolves around Mandy Steingasser, a vibrant and sociable individual who cherished her outdoor adventures with her father. Together, they embarked on camping trips and road journeys as Mandy fearlessly embraced her adventurous spirit. On one occasion, she even encountered a ground squirrel, cradling it in her arms with affection. Unfortunately, the squirrel bit her, but such encounters were not uncommon for Mandy, who possessed a penchant for interacting with various creatures during her camping escapades. Her personality was enigmatic, and she often associated with individuals who carried an air of danger. When questioned about her choice of friends, she simply stated that she did not pass judgment on them. In the autumn of 1993, Mandy, a 17-year-old senior at North Tonawanda High School near Buffalo, New York, found herself at a crossroads. Although academically gifted, she had yet to solidify her career plans and subsequently enrolled at Niagara County Community College after graduation. Mandy exuded boundless energy and reveled in the thrill of parties and experimenting with alcohol. At times, her enthusiasm for such activities caused her to lose track of time, occasionally forgetting to return home. To ensure her safety, her parents established a set of rules for her evening outings. She was expected to adhere to a specific curfew, and, if unable to do so, she was required to inform her parents or make her way home as swiftly as possible. On the 18th of September, 1993, a Saturday night, Mandy ventured out with her friends. Stacy, her boyfriend Brian, and Brian's acquaintance, Wayne. Stacy and Mandy had arranged a sleepover at the Steingassers' residence, with the understanding that they would return home by midnight. Both Mandy and Stacy were 17, while Brian and Wayne were a few years older. Wayne possessed his own apartment, making it convenient for them to procure alcohol. That evening, the group decided to visit a liquor store to purchase whiskey and rum before embarking on a journey from North Tonawanda to Buffalo in Wayne's car. Their intention was to attend a rock concert at a local bar, but unfortunately, the girls were denied entry due to their age by the bouncer. Brian and Wayne, being considerate, chose to stay with them as both girls were somewhat intoxicated. It was quite out of character for Mandy not to inform her parents about her whereabouts, especially since she had a curfew. After a short while, a car filled with men approached the group, accusing Brian and Wayne of harassing one of their neighbors. This led to a brief altercation, which frightened both Mandy and Stacy, causing them to flee in different directions. Shortly after, the sound of police sirens could be heard, prompting the men to hastily depart. Brian and Wayne desperately called out to the girls to return, but Mandy had vanished. She had fled out of fear that if the police found her, they would escort her back home, thus ruining her plan to sneak in without her parents' knowledge of her missed curfew. Mandy began her journey on foot towards her house, which was over a mile away. She headed north on Oliver Street until she reached a convenience store at the intersection of Fifth Avenue. It was there that a car pulled up beside her, and she leaned into the passenger seat before entering the vehicle. The driver was an acquaintance from her school who kindly offered to drive her home between 1:10 and 1:30 a.m. on September 19th. Regrettably, this marked the last time Mandy was seen alive. At 2:30 a.m., Stacy called Mandy's mother, Lorraine, inquiring whether Mandy had returned home. Lorraine became furious upon realizing that her daughter had not only missed curfew, but also failed to come home. Throughout the night, her parents anxiously awaited Mandy's arrival, but she never appeared. The following morning, they began reaching out to all of her friends. Fortunately, Mandy had a friend whose father was a police officer, and he promptly visited the Steingassers' residence. The commencement of the investigation unfolded, and the authorities proclaimed that she may have absconded, although Mandy's parents vehemently dismissed this notion as they possessed an intimate understanding of their daughter's character. Whispers began to circulate, insinuating that she had ventured southward to Florida alongside her lover, who had recently relocated there. However, on the 25th day of October in the year 1993, a fortnight following Mandy's inexplicable disappearance, two individuals engaged in a mushroom hunt stumbled upon a ghastly sight within the confines of Bond Lake Park. There, nestled upon the banks of Myers Lake, lay a set of severely decomposed human remains. It appeared as though an attempt had been made to submerge the lifeless body into the depths of the lake, only to be thwarted by the entanglement of foliage. Subsequent investigations confirmed the identity of the remains as belonging to Mandy. The forensic examination divulged a harrowing truth. She had met her demise through strangulation, her bra serving as the instrument of her demise. Furthermore, the report revealed the presence of 2 brain hemorrhages and a fracture near her frontal temple. The authorities' suspicions turned towards a fellow student from Mandy's school, the last person seen with her. Although the police publicly acknowledged the existence of a suspect, they refrained from disclosing his identity due to the dearth of evidence that would substantiate his culpability. Mandy Steingasser, a tender 17 years of age, was last sighted on the 19th day of September in the year 1993, approximately 1:30 in the morning, at the intersection of Fifth Avenue and Oliver Street within the city of North Tonawanda. Her lifeless body was discovered on the 25th day of October in the same year, within the confines of Bond Lake Park. The absence of substantial evidence caused this case to languish in obscurity for a quarter of a century, until the advent of new technological advancements that facilitated the examination of the culprit's DNA, which was found upon Mandy's remains. Finally, when the truth was unveiled, a plethora of evidence was amassed, paving the way for the district attorney to present a compelling case before the grand jury. On the 24th day of April in the year 2018, Josef Bellstadt was apprehended at his abode, mere moments after returning from his place of employment. It was his 43rd birthday, and he found himself facing a second-degree murder charge. Bellstadt maintained that, on September 19, 1993, he had indeed given Mandy a ride, but he insisted that he dropped her off in front of a church before stopping at a donut shop and returning home. However, witnesses contradicted his statement, claiming they saw Bellstadt picking up Mandy and then coming back. Furthermore, his friends revealed that he had asked them to provide false testimony in his favor. Despite Bellstadt's denial of these allegations, he was compelled to undergo a lie detector test. During the first attempt, he stormed out of the room due to the questioning's tone, but during the second test, his lies were exposed, confirming him as a liar. Another witness stepped forward, stating that Bellstadt had taken her to a secluded location weeks before Mandy's murder, shedding light on his possible motives. When investigators searched Bellstadt's car, they discovered 2 strands of pubic hair in the back seat, which they were unable to test in 1993. However, with the advancements in technology by 2018, the hair was confirmed to belong to Mandy. It was then established that Bellstadt had attempted to sexually assault her before becoming enraged and strangling her to death with her own bra. Finally, on March 9, 2020, his trial commenced, and the defense argued that he was being unjustly convicted without substantial evidence. Nevertheless, the jury presented numerous witnesses who testified about Bellstadt's behavior following Mandy's disappearance. They revealed that he had stopped attending school, to which Bellstadt claimed he had planned a trip to Canada that was ultimately cancelled due to unforeseen circumstances. However, all of these statements were proven to be lies, leading to his conviction for the murder of Mandy Steingasser. On January 14th, he received a 25-year prison sentence, despite his desperate attempts to maintain his innocence. "But I am not the person who killed Mandy. I am innocent," he maintained. Louise Martin, known as Cathy to her family and friends, was born on October 25, 1959. She crossed paths with Mike Odum during their high school years at the tender age of 16. Their young love blossomed, leading them to the decision of marriage. However, their plans were put on hold when Mike faced legal troubles for selling heroin to an undercover officer. Despite this setback, Cathy remained steadfast in her commitment to Mike, eagerly awaiting his release from prison. 2 years later, they finally tied the knot and welcomed 2 beautiful children, Tasha and Sean, into the world. The Odum family resided in the opulent Harris County, Texas, where Cathy's father, Frankie Martin, graciously offered Mike a position at his sign business. Cathy poured her heart and soul into ensuring the success of their marriage, earning her reputation as a devoted mother who would move mountains for her beloved children. Tragedy struck on the fateful night of March 3, 1987, when Mike, away on business, attempted to reach Cathy but received no response. Concerned, he enlisted the help of a neighbor to check on his family. What they discovered was a scene of horror. Tasha, brutally beaten and unconscious, Sean unharmed, and Cathy, lifeless and mutilated in their bedroom. The heinous crime left the community in shock, with officers fearing the return of the perpetrator to finish what they had started. Tasha and Sean were both transported to the hospital, and it was mandated that they must not be left unattended. Cathy's father, Frankie, arrived at the crime scene and was instructed to go to the hospital to be with his grandchildren. While at the hospital, Frankie witnessed the events surrounding his daughter on a television screen. Meanwhile, Mike finally arrived back at the house, where the police officers paid close attention to his appearance. One of the officers observed red stains on Mike's shirt that resembled blood. A search of the Odum's residence uncovered blood in the bathroom, indicating that the perpetrator, potentially Mike, had attempted to clean up before departing. There were no signs of a forced entry, as all doors were secured except for the front door, suggesting that Cathy was familiar with her assailant. The multiple stab wounds on Cathy's body suggested a personal motive behind the crime. The neatly folded clothes found on the floor also provided clues to the investigators. It was theorized that the attacker targeted Tasha in order to gain access to Cathy. Tasha remained in critical condition at the hospital, in a coma and dependent on IVs as doctors fought to save her life. The focus of the investigation shifted towards Mike Odum, Tasha's father, who displayed emotional distress. However, investigators harbored suspicions about him due to inconsistencies in his alibi. Mike's clothing was sent to the forensic lab for analysis. Additionally, peculiar stains were discovered on the car floor of the neighbor, Tim Robinson, leading investigators to believe that Tim and Mike conspired to commit the crime. The possibility of Mike relapsing and seeking insurance money was also considered. Yet, a surprising turn of events was about to unfold. The estimations of the medical examiner suggest that Cathy's life was taken approximately 6 hours prior to the discovery of her body, which would place the time of her demise around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Both Mike and Tim adamantly claim to have been diligently working during that time. As investigators meticulously scrutinized their alibis, a crucial witness emerged, none other than 4-year-old Tasha Odum. Emerging from her coma, Tasha recounted to investigators that she vividly remembers a man entering the house, describing him as having yellow hair. However, neither Mike Odum nor Tim Robinson possessed blonde hair. Regrettably, the man's hair color was the only detail Tasha could recall. Subsequent forensic tests revealed that the stains found in Tim's car were motor oil, while the stains on Mike's shirt were paint. Moreover, their co-workers provided unwavering alibis for both individuals, and they both successfully passed polygraph tests. Consequently, Mike and Tim were exonerated, allowing investigators to shift their focus to the next suspect. This individual was none other than Cathy's sister, Charlene Martin, who was married to Greg Marquardt. Their tumultuous relationship began thanks to Mike, as Greg and Mike had been closely associated in the drug scene. Charlene, like Cathy, was only 16 years old when she met the man she would eventually marry. Greg, who was 25 at the time, should have raised eyebrows. The couple tied the knot in 1983, and soon after both Charlene and Cathy spiraled into addiction, mirroring Greg and Mike's destructive path. Charlene was known for stealing from her own parents for financial gain. However, Greg's affluent aunt and uncle repaid the Martins, and legal actions were avoided. While Mike and Cathy managed to turn their lives around, Greg and Shelley continued their criminal activities, leading to frequent incarcerations. Prior to Cathy's untimely demise, she confided in a friend about Greg's inappropriate advances towards her, which she promptly rebuffed, while Shelley was occupied in another room with the baby. On hearing this, the investigators questioned Greg about his alibi on the night of Cathy's murder. Greg stated that he was not with his wife on the night of the crime. He was in the company of a man named Hampton Robinson III. It is worth noting that Robinson was an acquaintance of Charles Harrelson, who was the father of actor Woody Harrelson and was convicted of killing a judge in 1982. Robinson had testified against Harrelson during his trial. Despite the police finding Greg's fingerprints and hair at the crime scene, it was argued that as a family member who had visited the house multiple times, this did not necessarily indicate guilt. Cathy's parents expressed their belief to investigators that Greg was responsible. 2 days after Cathy's death, Frankie received a late-night call from the hospital where Tasha was being treated, informing him that Shelley and Greg had attempted to visit. Frankie instructed the hospital not to allow them in, citing suspicions about Greg and the unusual timing of their visit. Tasha's grandmother, Charlene Martins, recalled that Tasha reacted with fear upon seeing Greg at the hospital, and he was asked to leave. When questioned about the incident, Tasha could not recall if it was her Uncle Greg she saw with Cathy on the day of the attack due to her head injury. Greg, while denying any involvement, openly admitted his attraction to Cathy, particularly to her stomach. This preference was known to Cathy's friends, and it is notable that she was primarily stabbed in the stomach. During the interview, Greg requested to leave to refill a parking meter but did not return. He also declined to take a polygraph test, prompting investigators to further scrutinize his alibi. Shelley recounted that Greg chauffeured her to school at 10:30 a.m. on the day of the crime and retrieved her at 2:30 p.m. This luxurious 4-hour time frame provided ample opportunity for Greg to carry out the crime. The medical examiner pinpointed the time of her demise around 1 p.m. that fateful day. Despite Cathy's unfortunate ordeal, this incident unfolded in an era predating the widespread use of DNA in cold case inquiries. Back then, serology was the method of choice, involving the intricate process of blood group typing. This technique was arduous, requiring a substantial sample size to yield results. The outcome was merely a blood type, lacking definitive proof. The blood type extracted from the evidence found on Cathy's body matched Greg Marquardt's blood type, type O, shared by approximately half the population, rendering it inconclusive. With insufficient evidence, the case languished in obscurity for a considerable period. For Frankie, the realization that the perpetrator of his daughter's demise was wedded to his other daughter was a harrowing revelation. In 1998, a specialized cold case unit was established, with Cathy Odum's case being one of their initial investigations. By then, DNA testing had advanced significantly, enabling the extraction of a DNA profile from the biological evidence in Cathy's case. The results indicated that Greg Marquardt belonged to the exclusive 2% of the populace who could have been the culprit, a marked improvement from the previous 50% probability. Greg promptly provided investigators with an alibi, claiming he was engaged in a consensual relationship with Cathy and was in her company on the morning of her demise. He maintained that she was alive when he departed. Despite doubts cast on his account, Greg remained unapprehended due to insufficient evidence for a conviction. The crucial task was to establish his presence at the scene of the crime. Investigators sought the expertise of Catherine Long, employed at Orchid Cellmark, a prestigious private forensic laboratory in Dallas, Texas. Catherine devised a unique plan to unravel the mystery surrounding Cathy's crime. She and her team engaged in a peculiar activity of choking each other to see if skin cells would be transferred from the perpetrator to the victim. Astonishingly, they discovered a significant exchange of skin cells during the act. The investigators scoured through Cathy's evidence file in search of any trace of the perpetrator's skin cells. Their focus shifted to the electrical cord that was used to bind Cathy's hands. Fortunately, the cord had been stored in a paper bag rather than a plastic one. The paper bag's breathable nature ensured that the item remained dry, thus extending the lifespan of the DNA. This preservation method proved to be more effective than storing it in a plastic bag. The blood-stained cord was meticulously swabbed by the investigators to gather all possible evidence. Subsequent testing unveiled 2 genetic profiles, Cathy Odum's and Greg Marquardt's. The presence of Marquardt's DNA on the cord indicated his involvement as the perpetrator. Finally, on December 18, 2002, Greg Marquardt was apprehended and charged with Cathy's murder. During his time in prison, Marquardt confessed to a fellow inmate, revealing that he was under the influence of heroin when he committed the heinous act. His chilling account of the events that transpired at Cathy's house shed light on the brutal truth. The advancements in DNA technology ultimately led to his identification as the culprit 15 years after the crime. 6 months following his arrest, Greg's affluent aunt passed away, bequeathing him with hundreds of thousands of dollars and a share in her opulent abode. The Martins opted to take legal action against him, entangling the estate in a legal battle that hindered him from utilizing those funds for his defense. In 2004, Greg Marquardt entered a plea of guilty and was found guilty on all counts. By July of the same year, he was handed a 45-year prison sentence. After serving 4 years of his term, he succumbed to liver disease in 2008 at the age of 56. Sergeant Roger Wedgeworth was quoted as saying, "Couldn't happen to a more deserving individual." Shelley and her parents lost touch following the crime. While they believed in his culpability, she stood by Marquardt's side. It was rumored that Shelley continued to stand by Marquardt and maintained his innocence for an extended period. A couple of years post the crime, the Martins relocated to Oklahoma. Subsequently, it appeared that Shelley reconciled with her parents, and she too relocated to Oklahoma to be in close proximity to them. Cathy's father, Frankie, expressed, "It does not bring back Cathy. I will always cherish her memory, the home she created, and the moments we shared. Losing a child is always a profound sorrow,